Hey y'all, my name is Sarah and welcome to my channel. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to preface this video with a little bit of a discussion about rules in art and about why black watercolor in particular is such a controversy. So there are people out there who teach or who preach that you shouldn't use white or black watercolor paint in your palette. Now there are reasons why you would want to mix your own black shades of watercolor, and I'm going to address that in this video. But before I get into that, I just wanted to address rules in art. I'm a strong believer that art is about self-expression, and you should do what you want to do with your art. And if that means that you use black or white watercolor paint, then you use it. And forget what they say, it doesn't matter. There are some reasons why you may want to mix your own black paint, and I'm going to show you how to do that and discuss why. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't feel like it, if you don't feel like your art needs it, okay, that's totally cool. That is your art and it is your prerogative to make it that way. I have a really serious problem with people who try to say that there are rules in art. There are certainly some traditional techniques in all mediums, but as far as what you can and can't do, you are the only person who can ever dictate that. No one else. Don't let anyone ever tell you what you can and can't do with your own art, because it is yours. It is your safe space and they have no right to say anything about it. So having said all that, I hope that you enjoy this video about mixing black. I do think it can be valuable, but again, if you choose not to use it, that is totally your prerogative. Your art is yours and yours alone. I hope you enjoy the video. Today, I want to just talk about what that means, dead, or maybe a better way of describing it is less lively or less interesting. So I have here my pan of M-Gram, Ivory, and Lamp Black. I keep them in the same pan because I don't really use them that much, but I don't need that much of it. I don't care if they mix. It doesn't bother me. I'm not that picky. So I'm just going to swatch these out. They are not pre-wet. I'll just put a little dot of water on them. Get them started. So this is Lamp Black. It is a very, very black. When people talk about dead black paint, it's usually Lamp Black that they're referring to. I think it still has interest, but when it dries, people say it looks flat, and I can see how it would look flat when dry. And then the Ivory Black usually has a warmer tone to it, which you can see here, I hope, or at least once it dries, you'll be able to see. It's also a little bit less pigmented. I actually use Ivory Black mixed with Brown Madder or Quinacridone Burnt Scarlet to make my darker skin tones. I'll mix in a little purple and other shades, but those are the colors I use to make skin tones. I do use Ivory Black in skin tones, skin tone shadows, that kind of thing. The thing about watercolor that makes it interesting is that it blends and mixes and forms gradients, and it kind of has a life of its own. And when you use a single pigment black, you're sort of missing an opportunity for some interest. And I think that's really what people are referring to when they say that black paint looks dead. So what I'm going to do is show you first I'm going to go over the color theory behind mixing black in a very, very basic and easy to understand way. And then I'm going to show you some black mixes so you can play for yourself. The color theory behind mixing black is that it requires one of every primary color in order to create a black. So I'm just going to make a quick little color chart here. Often when we see black mixtures, though, they only use two colors. And the reason we can do that is you can combine two of your primary colors with the other third primary color, so you can use a color that is comprised of these two colors mixed with the other color to get your black. So let me show you what I mean. If you mix yellow and blue, you will get green. This is basic color theory, I hope we all kind of know this already. If you mix yellow and pink, you'll get orange. And if you mix blue and red, you'll get purple. So what this means is you could mix these three colors together in whatever variation to get your black. But to make it faster, you could mix the combined version of these two colors with its opposite color to get your black. So you could mix, I've just drawn a little doodle on my color chart here. So in order to make mixing blacks faster, you can use a secondary color mixed with a primary color to get the same effect as mixing all three of the primary colors. So if black requires blue, yellow, and red to be created, if we need to use yellow and blue to make green, then we could therefore mix green just with red to get black. We could mix orange just with blue to get black. We could mix purple just with yellow to get black. Now there are some very specific sort of colors and tones that this will work with, so it doesn't work all the time. For example, if I'm in my little mixes here, for this one, for example, I mixed anthraquinone blue with quinacridone gold deep. Now anthraquinone blue would be considered my blue, and quinacridone gold deep is it's a fairly orange shade, but instead of getting a neutral color, I ended up with kind of a dark green. Now this is definitely a neutral, but it's not necessarily a black. It's a little too green for that. These other shades will end up in various dark shades of purple and green and brown. So notice I've just said that these mixes will end up in varying shades of purple and green and brown or orange. So the darker versions of these secondary colors is what we're going to end up with. So I'm just going to show you some of the mixes I've been playing with to explain this concept in a more direct way. I'm going to start with everyone's favorite basic gray-black mixture. And this is very, very common, and that mixture is ultramarine blue mixed with burnt sienna. And when we mix these two together, we get a kind of grayish brown tone depending on the quantities of the paints. That's a nice gray color. Now, depending on the amount of paint that you put in, you can push this color towards blue or towards brown. So this is a bluer version, but if I add in a little bit more burnt sienna, we can get a more brown version. So that's the most common mix. These are very light, but the more pigment or the more paint you put into your mixture, the darker it will go. So I'm going to do that just for this one, but the others I won't show quite as dark because it takes a lot of pigment to make such a dark mixture, and I don't want to waste my paint. And sometimes it's kind of hard to not get too much water in your mixes. Okay, so there's my darker version of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I could keep going, I could keep making this darker and darker, but it takes a lot of pigment to get there. So the next mixture I want to show you is a little bit more interesting, and I think it's really fun. This is M. Graham's quinacridone rose. And the brand doesn't matter. I shouldn't even tell you the brand. Now, if you take quinacridone rose and mix it with something like phthalo green or viridian, something really cool and interesting happens. Now, keep in mind that this green leans a little bit blue. It's still a green, but it leans towards the cooler side. When you mix those together, you get a really interesting grayish purple. And again, if you keep adding one or the other, you can make that color lean one direction or the other. So it leans a little green or it leans a little pink. Now, again, I could keep going and make this darker. I just don't want to waste my paint. You can also use permanent alizarin crimson for this color. That works really well. Quinacridone magenta could work. You could also do quinacridone magenta and phthalo green. These are really strong colors, especially from Core, but you get a really, really gorgeous purple. Now, remember I said, when you do these color mixes, you will end up usually with just a very, very dark secondary tone. So it'll be a dark brown, a dark purple, or a dark green. So in this case, we're getting a dark purple. And we could add not that one. You could add a touch more green, and you can get all kinds of different variations in this mixture. So that one looks a little bit blue. So you can play around with the tones and get some really interesting variations. Another fun mixture is permanent scarlet. This is Core. Now, I will specifically with Core, we can use permanent scarlet because it's a transparent warm red. If you use a less transparent red, this mixture is going to look a little bit muddy on the palette, but once you put it on the page, it's not quite so muddy. So this is a very warm red, almost orange, and you can mix that with phthalo blue green shade. And this one goes really dark really quick. So the stronger the color, the darker it goes. So that's that mixture. And if I add a little bit more blue, you can even get into like the anthraquinone blue area or an indigo shade. Another mixture I wanted to show, if you use two darker shades together, you will end up with a darker black color. So in this case, I'm gonna use indigo. And in Core, the indigo is not super, super dark, but it is darker than the other blues. I'm gonna use indigo and burnt umber. So the idea is the same as the first one I showed you with the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, but it should have less granulation and it should be darker. Now, sometimes your tones can lean a little bit green, so just watch out for that. And this is gonna be a warmer black shade. And if I don't like it, I can add a little more indigo. And it'll go a little cooler. You could also try some mixes with Payne's Gray. So with the Payne's Gray, I could use burnt umber. And again, this might go a little bit green, so you kind of have to be careful. So that's the Payne's Gray and burnt umber. So in a painting, if you made these mixtures dark enough, they would all work as if they were a black, but they would have more interest than a black. And that's the beauty of mixing your own black paint. And that's why people talk about black paint looking dead, because you have all these other tone variations that will read as black in a painting. So why would we choose to use this super black but one-toned black shade when you could use, you know, a Payne's Gray with a touch of burnt umber and get something that has so much more interest but still reads as black when it's in relation to the rest of your painting. So I just wanted to do a little short video on how black paint mixtures work and how we use them in art. So I'm going to pull out a few paintings now just to show you how I like to use black mixes in my paintings. But again, art has no rules in my opinion, and if you find a way to use black mixtures or black paint in a way that works for you, I say go for it. So I've pulled out this painting first because I wanted to show you, I actually only used Payne's Gray in this painting. It's not a mixture, it's just Payne's Gray, and then I did put a little bit of purple here in the hair that you can barely see. So you don't always have to use black or You don't always have to use a mixture that you mix yourself. Payne's Gray is in and of itself a mixture of 2 or 3 pigments. So I think it's perfectly acceptable for you to use Payne's Gray as a black replacement. Is it the most interesting? Not really, because you can see it's all very single tone and monotonous. But where I've mixed in the different shades of purple, and I think there's even some green in there, I think it shows a lot more visual interest. So in this painting, I have mixed ivory black with brown matter to get this shadow tone. This is one of my favorite ways to use a real single pigment black in watercolor. I just wanted to point that out, and I believe this color is some kind of blue and brown mixture as well. Now I showed this painting in a speed paint a few videos ago, so I'll link to that in the description. But I just wanted to point out again here, I've used ivory black mixed with brown matter for the skin tone shadow area. And then her hair is a mixture of, I believe, sepia and Payne's Gray. So that's a great way to get a darker hair color that doesn't read as straight black. So you can see there's some darker areas. There's definitely some sepia in here, but you can see even the blue shades around the edges. This painting, I posted the video very recently in my review of Nightshade watercolors. I used ultramarine blue and burnt sienna for all of these darker blue gray tones. So it does read a little more blue or a little more brown in areas, but it has a lot of visual interest because it's got that granulation going on from the ultramarine blue. It's got a nice gray tone here, and even this shadow under the digger is made with the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. It's just watered down. And this area here where it's darkest is still the same mixture, it's just more concentrated. So this is what I mean when we talk about adding visual interest through your black paint mixtures. These areas look far more interesting than if I had just gone over them with lamp black. And in this painting, I have used burnt sienna and ultramarine for the rock. And I've just done darker tones and some lines in some places. Just with a darker amount of, or a heavier pigment load to make it darker. And additionally, this color here, these darker spaces are mixed black as well. And this spot here, and all these gray tones, this is all burnt sienna and ultramarine. And this is just a darker version of burnt sienna and ultramarine. So I just wanted to show you how we can use these black mixtures in interesting ways, because really we almost never use straight black paint. So I hope that this video has helped you understand how we mix grays and how they can be useful in our paintings and what it means when we say that black paint looks dead. And I think the translation of that is it looks less lively and less interesting. If you have any questions about mixing your black paints, or if you have a favorite black mixture that I didn't mention, leave it in the comments down below. If you have questions, leave them down below. Please like and subscribe. It definitely helps the channel out and helps me reach more people. And thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you next week. Bye.